to welcome Rav Singh to our to this youth dialogue. Rav, she, her is a farmer and runs a food and climate justice organization in Mississauga called Shade of Miti. Rav focuses on growing organic and local veggies, including okra, bitter melon, fenugreek, Chinese broccoli, and more. She's helping to build sustainable food systems that are rooted in justice and sovereignty and not threatened by our climate crisis. Rav also shares her own podcast and radio show and is helping to start Peel's Third Youth Food Circle. She's previously been a part of the Toronto Youth Food Policy Council and the Peel Food Action Council and the Food Secure Canada Youth Caucus. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Rav Singh. We are really excited to hear your voice and hear what and for you to share your knowledge. The floor is yours, and I will be helping you with the slides.
Cool. Thank you for that great introduction. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Like I was just introduced, my name is Rav. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a farmer in Mississauga, which is Treaty 13 land and the traditional territories of the Wendat, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit. So I just want to take a moment to recognize the many nations of Indigenous people who currently live on this land, have spent time here, and also ancestors who have hunted and gathered on this land. And I also do want to take a moment to acknowledge the many people of African descent who are not settlers, but whose ancestors were forcibly displaced and made to work on these lands and within our food systems. And I think both Indigenous sovereignty and Black liberation are really key aspects of our food systems and the environmental movement. So like you saw on the last slide, I do run a food and climate justice organization called Shade of Miti, where I work with communities who face oppression and marginalization within our food and climate systems. And I work with these communities to help build food systems that are rooted in justice and sovereignty and not threatened by climate change. So on the next slide, you'll see a picture of some veggies like bitter melon, hot peppers. Okay, cool. Someone in the chat said I'm back. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Sorry, the power went out and I'm tethered to my phone now. So hopefully this works. I'm really sorry about that, everyone. Like I was saying, yeah, I run really cool farmers and chefs and climate educators and community member and share their stories and projects. And I'm also working with a friend to create a multi-language tree guide that will be released in a few weeks that is aimed at helping newcomers and first generation settlers and others explore our local environment and create a more inclusive and welcoming outdoor space. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about food justice with you all. But before I get into that, we can go to the next slide where I wanted to talk about the interconnectedness of food. So on the next slide, you'll see there's kind of like three overlapping circles with the title Food Intersections. So I'm assuming if you've made it to this event, you probably have an idea that food is more than just food. So I'm going to give everyone like 30 seconds just to think about what food means to you and what it's connected to in your life. And we probably won't have time to do a bit of sharing right now, but I'm hoping this will help in our breakout rooms later on. So yeah, just take 30 seconds right now and think about what food means to you and how it's connected to different aspects of your life. So I'll give us maybe like 15 more seconds to think about this. Okay, so I know that wasn't a lot of time to think if we had more time and if we did a little like sharing with each other, I'm sure we would see that food means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And even your relationship with food, if you think about what it is now versus what it was a year ago versus 10 years ago, your relationship with food will change throughout your life. So I also, before we move on, I want to also acknowledge that if there were any like negative or hard feelings that came up, that's totally okay and totally valid, because sometimes our experience and interaction with food isn't always a great experience. So on the next slide, I've outlined some examples of how food is interconnected into different parts of our life and community. So on this slide here, you'll see a picture, or there's a picture of like a curry dish in the middle with some forks coming out pointing to different things. And those different elements read environment and change, housing, politics, race, community building, capitalism and colonialism, gender and sexuality, and income and economics. So this is just to remind ourselves that when we talk about food, again, we're talking about a lot of different things, and there's a lot of different aspects of our community and who we are as an individual that intersect with food. So there's always a lot of discussion around food justice, food sovereignty, and food security. And I get that those three terms can be confusing because they're different, but there's also a lot of similarities and overlap between the three concepts. So on the next slide, you'll see those three terms written on the slide. And then there's a picture of a target with lots of different arrows going towards the target. So food security, if you're interested in knowing the definition, you can just Google it, and there's like a lot of definitions that come up, but it basically lists some criteria. For example, access to healthy food, having food that meets your food preferences, and a lot more. And it basically says if you meet this criteria, you're food secure. If you don't, then you are food insecure. So I like to think of food security as kind of like the goal. It's what we're aiming for, because food security, all it really does is state the situation of being secure or not under the current systems that are in place. It doesn't really show us or tell us how we can get to the goal itself if we're not there, or if we are there, it doesn't really tell us about or show us how we got there or how the position of being food secure is being maintained. So there's lots of different ways we can get to food security. That's why I put a lot of different arrows on the picture. And right now, the current systems that a lot of us rely on include things like capitalism and colonialism and extraction. For some communities, this works, but for others, and for many of us, it leaves us food insecure. So this is kind of where food justice and food sovereignty come in, because food justice and food sovereignty gives us space to look at how we can get to our goal if we're not there. Or if we are there, it's an opportunity for us to really critically look at the systems that helped us get there. So for example, if there is a food secure community, you know, that's operating under like extraction and capitalism, et cetera. Food security just tells us, yes, we're here. But if we bring in food justice and food sovereignty and really look at the details of how we got there and how we're maintaining that position, we may see that these methods are, you know, exploitative of migrant labor. They're unjust towards Black and Indigenous bodies and lives. They're harmful and unsustainable in other ways also. So food justice and food sovereignty, I'll add in a link to the chat right now if you want to like read like more of the, I guess, the definition of food sovereignty and the origins of this definition. But food justice and food sovereignty are about more about addressing the injustices to people and our planet within the food system. So there's lots of things that go into this. And on the next slide, you'll see, this is just kind of like a snippet of an Instagram post I made a while ago. And it's basically my version of the Swiss cheese model. So there's a bunch of different colored leaves stacked against each other, and each leaf has different sized holes that are placed at different spots in the leaf and on the leaves. And the leaves are labeled living wages, climate action, food and seed sovereignty, decolonization, worker rights, social and racial justice, mutual aid, police abolition, and food as a right. So this is just to help us visualize some of the common pieces and layers you'll find in food justice and food sovereignty, and to remind us that all these aspects, including the ones that I didn't list here, because there's a lot I didn't list here, are important and needed, because whatever gets through the holes of one leaf will be captured by another leaf. And there's a lot of youth layers that we could add into this like diagram. So things like youth food mentorship, the importance of youth food circles and networks and groups, climate change in food, land access for food and training, food entrepreneurship training, and lots more. So I think we can go to the next slide, where I think I have some ideas listed for practicing allyship, not just in farming, gardening, and eating, but just in our whole food system. So in the middle, there's a picture for connected hands, and the text around it reads, supporting BIPOC and 2S LGBTQ+ farmers and seed keepers, learning whose land you're eating and growing on, growing your own food and saving and sharing seeds, connecting with local people and organizations, and supporting our global food community. So 3 examples that I've listed here, although there's many, many more, are the India Farmer Protests, Palestine and Food, and the United Nations Summit on Food, and the Global People's Food Summit. So I think it's super, super cool that there's this space for us here today for us to connect and discuss. And I think this will eventually lead to some letter or something that's sent to the summit that represents part of the youth perspective. So I'm really hoping in the breakout room today we can practice allyship and practice the principles of food justice and food sovereignty by really looking at Food Summit is being organized because right now, like it was mentioned at the beginning, the summit is not acting on principles of food justice or food sovereignty. Really, really important voices of farmers, indigenous groups, peasant farmers, and marginalized communities and more are intentionally being excluded. Corporations, not the farmers or the global community, have so far been setting the agenda. So I'd like for us to think about how we can play a role with the position we've been given today, and with this letter writing opportunity in supporting how things can be done differently. So we do see more food justice in the summit, which will lead to the food systems changes and the growth that I think are needed. If you want to learn more about kind of some of the risks and concerns that people have for the Food Summit as it stands now, I'll put a link in the chat, and it's just kind of like a really, really quick summary, but it's a good, I think, starting point if you are wanting to learn a bit more. Sorry, the link's really long, and yeah, jump off from there. On the last slide, I've just included a poster for the Global People Summit on Food Systems, which is being organized as kind of like a counter summit. I'll include the link in the chat for this as well if anyone wants to check it out, as well as another opportunity that's focused on like reclaiming people's sovereignty over food systems. I think that event is happening in 2 weeks as part of a counter event to the pre-summit events that are happening in Rome. So I encourage you to go to both websites, look at how these communities are organizing, because they really are setting a great leadership example of how summits like this can be organized by putting food justice and food sovereignty at the center of the planning. And also too, I encourage you to read about what these people are asking for, why they feel like they need to move away from the UN summit and make their own space. And also discuss and think about in the breakout rooms how we can be allies and help support them in bringing their ideas even further in the UN and the food summit. And, you know, without us and other youth stepping up and supporting these voices, as well as advocating for ourselves, the summit will continue to not be run on principles of food justice and food sovereignty. They'll continue to run on some really harmful systems, which we know don't work. So I think we have a really great opportunity here to use our power and position to ensure a difference is made. So yeah, so I can take any questions people may have. I think there is one more slide with just like my contact info if people need quick questions. And thanks for listening.
Thank you, Rav. That was really great. I think a lot of your points that you made, I was just like nodding my head really like hard. But yes, if anyone has a question, feel free to enter it into the chat, or if you would like to unmute yourself and ask Rav herself.
Oh, I see people can't access the link. I'm sorry, I'll resend it in a minute. So I see a question, how did I get into farming? How old were you? So I started farming 4 years ago, so in my early 20s. And I kind of fell into it by accident. In my last year of my post-secondary, I was just looking for a summer job because I needed money. And I knew I wanted to work outdoors. So I just Googled outdoor jobs in the city I was at, and a farming opportunity came up. And for whatever, I don't know, I have no good reason for like signing up for it, but I signed up for it. I somehow got it. And yeah, I guess it really changed my life because it made me realize that I love farming, and that's what I wanted to do. Another question, does this only consider humans or also include justice for other animals? Yeah, I think like putting humans and the planet, which, you know, there's a lot of other species that are part of this planet, and the ecosystems and environment that we're part of too. Yeah, I think it's just more about putting people, planet, which includes the animals and all other species, before corporations, essentially. So yes, short answer to that question, yeah, it does include other species.
So I actually had a question for you, Rav. I noticed on one of your slides that you included gender and sexuality in the many topics that intersect food. I was wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that, because that's something I don't always have at the top of my head when I'm thinking about food and food systems.
Yeah, so some examples of gender and sexuality could include like, for example, people who are transgender individuals, they may have, you know, additional layers of things that they face in accessing land, for example, or being able to access things like food banks or like other emergency food programs. Another example is, it's kind of, yeah, I guess it is kind of like related to gender and sexuality. Some professions like sex workers, there's a lot of, again, like just like different experiences that they have in moving through our food system. And there's a lot of ways, not just our food system, but a lot of systems fail sex workers, transgender individuals, and others who don't, you know, like follow like the norms, I guess, of gender and sexuality. So yeah, just like that's a really key part of food justice, is recognizing that people are coming to our food systems with very different identities and layers to who they are, gender and sexuality being just one of them. And we need to acknowledge that and consider how that affects how they move and are impacted by our food system.
We do have a question in the chat. Just about who you follow to learn, stay informed on these topics.
Who do I follow? Oh no, there's a lot of great people I follow, I guess. Some big ones that come to mind right now. Oh, I feel like I'm going to say their name wrong. Someone can correct me, please, if I get it wrong. I think they're called, it's a group called Justice for Migrant Workers. They post some really, really amazing stuff. There's also on Instagram, Our Food Systems. They're kind of like the organizing body of People's Summit. That's the counter event to the UN Summit. And yeah, there's just a lot of like mutual aid, grassroots groups that are local to where I am that I find a lot of inspiration from. And yeah, but I do follow a lot of like BIPOC farmers and foodie people, as well as 2S LGBTQ+, a lot of like sex workers who are doing really great food work. Yeah, those are some examples.
So
cool.
Do we have another question?
I guess I'll throw it back to you.
I'll jump in with one more question before we move on, Rav. I thought you did such a great job of explaining like what food I can't even speak anymore, sovereignty was and food justice. But I was wondering if you could go a little more in depth on how that relates to your own work, like on the farm, and also like what would your number one piece of advice be for other youth or young people looking to get involved in farming and, farming through a lens of food justice?
Yeah, great question. So I'll answer the second part first. My piece of advice is find opportunities to learn from others who share similar like identities and experiences that you do. So when I was first starting my farming, I was learning a lot of, or there was a lot of like education I was going to that was led by white farmers, which is really great. I learned a lot from those farmers. But there was just like some things that I couldn't learn from them. I have different identities and I move in the world differently than them. So that's my advice is just find someone who I guess like a mentor who can share some education and tips with you. And then for the first part of your question, a really big part of I think food sovereignty and food justice for me is sorry, I'm not connect. Sorry, is, oh my gosh, I can't find the connecting word, but it's about a community's right to be able to like define their own food system, to say this is what we want, and get it. So part of what I'm doing to help build that here in Mississauga is, for example, the reason that I choose to grow things like bitter melon and okra is it is very like there is a reason behind that, and the reason is at farmers markets you won't really find a lot of like South Asian vegetables like that, or Caribbean vegetables like callaloo. And so I strategically am growing that to help these communities realize that they do have, and help these communities reclaim that space within our local food system, and to show others that they deserve that space. So that's one example of what I'm doing. And then another quick example is I really think a key in our food sovereignty is seed sovereignty. I really believe that whoever controls our seeds has a lot of control over our food system. So I'm not doing it yet, but I hope one day to be able to be a seed grower and a seed farmer, to be able to share these seeds with my community.
Thanks. That was a great answer and really insightful.
All right, so I think that ends our Q&A part of the presentation, of Rav's presentation. So right now we are just going to move on to a short energy break because we will be moving into kind of fruitful discussion, and it's going to be about an hour. So I have 6:39 as my time right now. I will see everyone at 6:44. Please stretch, take a break, get a snack. We will see you soon.